I went along with him. As I say these words, I realize that I went along with too much in those days. No one was twisting my arm, not yet. Everything was mild and gradual, one small step and then another. It started in such small ways that I didn't see the pattern until much later. Linda Lovelace, pornographic actress.
A trafficker is one who recruits, transfers, harbors, or receives a person for the purposes of exploitation and the prostitution of others, and other forms of sexual exploitation, such as pornography, even with the person's alleged consent. A pimp is a person who arranges, exploits, leases, manages, or maintains a place for the prostitution of others, even with a person's alleged consent. Both benefit financially from sexual exploitation, while prostituted women suffer serious infringements of their human rights. The Pimps Illustrated Manual explains the main techniques used by pimps and traffickers to manipulate and mentally control women in order to convince them that they're in prostitution by their own choice. 1. Flattery and infatuation. The pimp identifies a woman in a vulnerable position. He flatters her, promises her a stable and loving life. Once in love, he uses subtle blackmail and then invites her to act out of love even if she feels uncomfortable. Number 2. Transportation and debt bondage. A trafficker promises a life of progress somewhere else, convincing her that she has nothing to lose and much to gain. But when the woman arrives at her destination, reality is very different. In return, a higher debt than the actual cost is demanded. When the victim evaluates her alternatives, she recognizes that she is alone. Under the pressure of daily interests and the need to send money to her family, she begins to consider the pimp's offers. Number 3. Introduction to prostitution and pornography. The pimp makes her think that in prostitution she will be able to start earning money quickly. Eventually, the pimp facilitates a first rape in exchange for money. Although she is devastated, her new context and her new so-called friends make her believe this is the best alternative. 4. Forced addictions. The pimp also offers and sells drugs and alcohol to the prostituted women so that she can quench her mental and emotional suffering. Life in prostitution becomes unbearable. The demands of the men are more and more traumatizing. While the woman feels temporary relief from pain and post-traumatic stress symptoms, the pimp increases his profits and makes her look more compliant to buyers. Number 5. Isolation and sensory deprivation. The woman lives and is prostituted in confined spaces with no familiar objects or emotional ties. The pimp manages to keep her disoriented and dependent, with fear and guilt as if everything was a consequence of her bad decisions. She surrenders to all of the pimp's demands. Number 6. Exhaustion and physical weakness. The lights, the noise, cold nights, the lack of rest and adequate food increase her vulnerability and decrease her capacity for discernment and self-protection. The number of encounters with men exhausts her. If she complains, the pimp threatens her with further punishments and illegal fines. Number 7. Threats and degradation. It is common for pimps to require her cooperation with the invisible networks in which she forms part. She is constantly degraded through verbal abuse. The pimp succeeds in weakening her mentally and emotionally, and in making her feel like she is responsible for the abuse and punishment she receives. Number 8. Torture by non-state actors. The woman disassociates or disconnects herself in order to control the pain of the perversions of sex buyers. The pimp, when he punishes her, hits her on the head, where wounds are not noticeable, and he can continue exploiting her. She needs to create mental narratives to make sense of her suffering and help her cope with her helplessness. Number 9. occasional indulgences. The pimp generates competition among the women, who feel strong at times knowing that they are desired. He reinforces the idea of conditioning her body to please men's desires. But the pimp's behavior is often unpredictable. That's why the woman must be vigilant to always try to please him. Now she sees the world and sees herself as the pimp sees her. Number 10, omnipotence. The pimp makes women feel not only fear of death, but gratitude for letting her live. Social acceptance and justification. While the woman is repeatedly traumatized, the pimp counts on society to justify what happens to her because she allegedly asked for it, and they continue to believe that she enjoys it. All of these techniques allow the woman to believe that it was, in fact, her decision to be in the prostitutional system in the first place. But no one questions them. Is it a cousin? Is it a boyfriend? A husband? A friend? A neighbor? An uncle? Or a father? The pimp. Some of the human rights at issue are clearly infringed. The right to be born free and equal, to be free from discrimination, the right to life and security, to be free from slavery, free from torture, the right to freedom of movement, the right to satisfy one's rights, to work, to have a family, and maternity. Please share what prostitution hides.